Hi guys, this is Snap, and today we're going to be doing a roundup of all of the builds we're going to be playing in Harvest League. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about what we're doing or how we're building characters in the era of cluster jewels. So in this video we're going to go through how we're building everything using cluster jewels. Hopefully answer all your questions about how we're building things. There are timestamps down in the description if you want to fast forward to a particular build you're interested in, so please use those if you want to skip around the video. But there is a lot of information, so let's get started. We are going to make a few assumptions here, one of them being that Purposeful Harbinger is going to get absolutely fucking deleted alongside the Herald stupid garbage. So making that assumption, with Heralds being gone, we're going to be going straight back to self-cursing. We are still going to be doing the Zerker into Jugg pathway. The POE linked here has different stages for each step of the passive tree, so you can feel free to flick through those when you're going through. It's essentially the same leveling as before, where you rush a Storm Cloud and you get a point blank keystone here. You're starting Zerker with Aspect of the Carnage as your first ascendancy, and then you grab the Rage and Triple Rage. We are planning on doing a lot of low level farming this league like we did in Delirium League, sitting in Blood Aqueducts for 8 hours or something like that, and then going on to Waterways. While we're doing this low level farming, we're working on acquiring the cluster jewels that are essential for the endgame build. So when you're self-cursing, you need 175% curse effectiveness on your character in the tree in order to reach the temp chains cap. That's with a solstice. There are some pretty easy places to get the curse effectiveness. The first one being anointing skittering runes for 15%. The second one is to get a temp chains curse effect enchant on your helmet. And the last one here is to use a 2023 curse on hit gem that gives you 11%. So with all of that curse effectiveness out of the way, we need to plan to get 120% curse effect on our cluster jewels. We get this by comboing two notables on our cluster jewels, which is Dark Discourse and Whispers of Death. You need to make sure that these are 6 passive cluster jewels so you can get 30% per wheel. When you do this, voices aren't necessary, and you can actually get away with doing the build with just 2 large cluster jewels. So we're getting 30% here, 30% here, 30% here, 30% here for 120. For the small clusters, we like Feast of Flesh just because it gives a pretty hefty life gain on hit effect that is super useful for the carry. The large is also a combo of Sadist and Storm Rider, just giving a hefty % increased damage that carries normally lack. Other than those cluster jewels, it's some pretty basic stuff. We do have one inspired here and another inspired here in the normal spots, and the only stuff we're taking on the tree normally is going to be the Lethality cluster, the Primeval Force cluster, and the Master Fletcher cluster. This is a level 94 tree, so if you do get the extra points and get to 96, you can take this life cluster right here, and you can also take this Abyss socket right here, bumping you up to 4200 life, which is plenty for a carry build. As for the Ascendancy on the Jugg, obviously we need the Cannot Be modified below base speed. We also have Undeniable for the insane accuracy bonus it gives us, as well as we want to grab Unyielding because it gives AoE per endurance charge. This actually works with Rain of Arrows. It's a great thing to have. Extra AoE, it feels great. As for the gearing of this character, you get a lot of uniques, some pretty standard MFing stuff. You got the Wind Ripper, Greed's Embrace, Shackles for Self-Curse, Goldworms for MF, Solstice for the Self-Curse, 2 Pariahs that are White Socket, and a Headhunter. All of those items should be no surprise there. It's important to get 2 things on your quiver and helmet, and that is crafted int. This build really struggles with int requirements, so you need to make sure you have a socket on your lion pelt that you can craft intelligence, and also a place to craft int on your quiver. A small thing that can help with your intelligence requirement as well is getting a intelligence implicit on your life jewels. And then also you can grab the 30 node here. Alright, moving on to the main support or Aurabot. The one thing you should know is that the gearing of this character is practically the same from the items. The main change you're going to find is that you're going to be introducing 2 cluster jewels into the mix. You're going to have all the normal items, Sign of the Sin Eater, Prism Guardian, Alpha's Howl's Shavs, Voidbringer, Sintrex, Presence. But on the supports, I've been opting to go for 2 voices. You can probably fit in a 3rd or 2 larges if you get enough reservation on your jewels. However, I don't like planning around being able to get -1 cluster jewels, so I plan on doing my build around not having any -1 cluster jewels. They're a nice bonus if you get them, but I wouldn't plan around having them early. The main thing we're doing is we're stacking 2 notables, which is First Among Equals and Replenishing Presence. Replenishing Presence is an insane regen buff when you stack it, and when you're reserving 10 or 12 auras, you're getting an insane regen buff. You can see here on my actual character, my ES regen per second fluctuates between 1907 and around 3600, and that's passive regen. When you turn on Vol Disc, which is a completely separate buff, you're going to be alternating between like 5 and 6k energy shield regen per second. Stacking Replenishing Presence honestly just makes it so nobody can die in the map, which is generally good, so the whole build is focused around stacking these Replenishing Presence notables. You also take First Among Equals because it has the most generic aura effect of any other notable. Other than that, you're still grabbing some of the easy reservation stuff you can get on the tree, also some pretty efficient ES pathing as well, but other than that, not much has changed. I will say, however, that if you do manage to get an absurdly large amount of cluster jewels that have -1 on them, or you're looking to invest some insane amount of money into your aura buff Discbot, you can definitely get enough reservation to drop Shavs, take CI, and go Victarios. But that is completely reliant on how much you're willing to spend. Moving on to the curse spot, it's pretty self-explanatory here. Turns out cluster jewels are pretty strong, and your entire goal of the build should be to stack as many Dark Discourse and Forbidden Word notables as possible. This build is completely possible with 7 passive voices. I have 3 of them. You could honestly just slap on large cluster jewels as well, but your main focus should be on getting Dark Discourse and Forbidden Words. Also, don't forget about the 100 energy shield from Energy from Naught. Early on, when you don't have access to a lot of -1 jewels, you are going to have to wear Shavs and a Prism Guardian in order to fit in all of the curses. But later on, once again, when you get the -1 jewels, let's say you have some Energy from Naughts with -1, you can absolutely spec CI, then take off the Shavs and put on some ES chests. Spider can be good, really whatever you want. Alright, moving on to the Mana Guardian. This is one of the big things that has changed in our party comp. So now, with the post-nerf Radiant Faith, as well as the introduction of Cluster Jewels, Mana Guardian is no longer the best defensive tool for a party. This build revolves around stacking Stalwart Commanders because it is available to spawn on medium and small Cluster Jewels, which means you can get 2 + 2, 4 per large Cluster Jewel you have. When you path around the entire tree to grab 4 large Cluster Jewels, it means you have 16 Stalwart Commander notables. It gives a whopping 480% increased effective Grace, Determination, and Discipline. While on the way, pathing to those medium and small Cluster Jewels, you also pick up Scintillating Idea, which gives you maximum mana. We still take Radiant Faith, getting 1850 mana, which does contribute a hefty amount of energy shield when you fully reserve it. So if we look at the calcs here, our Discipline is giving 2,172 energy shield. If you fully reserve the 1,850 mana, that's also going to give you about 180. This is giving us about 2,350 energy shield total. The way you achieve this is by linking your Discipline to a level 4 Empower, and then also putting it inside of a Corrupted Alpha's How with plus level of Aura Gems. You also are stacking Replenishing Presence alongside the Aura Bot, giving another regen buff for everybody. And as a result of that, you want to look to reserve some garbage auras like Precision and Clarity to buff up the regen. Also, if possible, wearing the Sokka Wall set can give your teammates a big buff to either damage or movement speed. The Grace you turn on is also giving you around 100k evasion, which is absolutely nuts. What you can do with this build is try to get Iron Reflexes as well, which converts that into 127k armor. And if you can manage to fit in Determination over here, you go to a whopping 600k armor. The last bit of utility this build brings to the table is something called Disorienting Display. You grab 4 in total, 1 on each large cluster jewel, and it gives you a 40% chance to blind nearby enemies when you use an elemental skill. The blind radius for this is absolutely gigantic and covers the entire screen, and you can proc it with Flame Dash. So basically, you have a 40% chance every time you Flame Dash to blind the whole screen, which is a pretty nice defensive layer. And you can choose to put on a Perkle's Toe if you have the extra reservation available. And the last build on the table for the supports is the Flex Support, which has received a little bit of tweaking. So before, we opted our Flex Support role to be a Shockbot, which was pretty good, but I think with the changes to the Warcries, there's going to be something new. And this requires a little bit of explaining. So if we read the new Rallying Cry, it's been reworked into a support style skill. Causes nearby allies to gain a buff that grants them a percentage of your main hand weapon's damage based on the power of nearby enemies. So it works similar to old Warcries, where if there's more enemies in the area, you get more power from your Warcry. The interesting thing here is you get a percentage of your main hand's weapon damage based on the power. So we're going to use this to create a new type of support. Essentially, the build is just stacking Cry Wolf and Mob Mentality medium jewels. Cry Wolf gives an insane amount of buff effect as well as duration. It also gives you a minimum of 10 enemies nearby. This build takes 4 large cluster jewels for a total of 8 medium clusters, which means you'll have 8 of these, so a total of 80 minimum enemies nearby. Along the way on your large cluster jewels, you're going to be taking a node called Riot Queller, which gives you enemies taunted by you take 6% increased damage. Warcries now taunt implicitly every time you use them, so every time you taunt everything on screen, you're going to be causing the enemy to take 24% increased damage, which is a gigantic more multiplier. The concept behind this is to get a weapon with the highest base physical hit, not DPS. So we've chosen a very slow, hard-hitting weapon such as Meroes. You can corrupt it to 30%, and then what you can do is with all of the buff effect, transfer all of that physical damage onto the carry by using Rallying Cry. You can see here that the buff lasts 47 seconds. Additionally, the buff is snapshotted when you cast it, so what you can do is take out your Merohe, use the Rallying Cry to give your carry a bunch of physical damage, and then after you've done the Warcry that lasts 50 seconds, you can then weapon swap the 2 ephemeral edges. damages. This puts you well over 8k energy shield, which is completely acceptable for a T16 map. We're obviously going to have to wait on the numbers of Rallying Cry to see if this is actually going to be something that's just insane or terrible. We're just going to have to wait on that. The reason you go mob mentality for the rage is because of the skill called Berserk. You give the rage to everybody in the party, including the supports, which lets them use this skill Berserk. It gives you 30% more movement speed, less damage taken, as well as attack speed, which obviously isn't very useful on supports, but the movement speed and less damage taken is kind of insane. And every time you Warcry, you're giving everybody 40 rage, which gives you an insanely high uptime on this skill. So everybody's going to be moving faster and taking less damage. As for the gearing of this character, you just put on some random energy shield uniques that you can get. Perkle's Toe if the Mana Guardian isn't using it. You can also try to fit in an aspect through Venomous if you'd like. And don't forget, we're spamming energy from nuts. As for the Ascendancy, I guess you have a little bit of choice on this one. Honestly, you could play this as of any large number of Ascendancies. I think Necro offers the most utility out of all of them, but if you wanted to, you could be an Inquisitor even, because you offer increased damage and less damage taken through Augury of Penitence. You could honestly also be a Zerker for the duration and cooldown recovery speed. Champion is also a super good option for this because when you Warcry, you inherently taunt, and these champion taunt nodes give more damage to your carry. But yeah, that's about it. Anyways, I hope this cleared up some things for you guys who are looking to see what kind of builds we're playing post Delirium. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Once again, I'm Snap, and thanks for watching.